And the first one was actually not the first one, but it's one I'm going to do first, had to do with this Freedom Radio web video that was on YouTube, where this individual that I am not familiar with, he goes through the second part of addendum, and he makes these I can't say defenses. He makes these incredible statements in refutation of the points that are made, which are extremely academic. It's amazing. Just so you guys know what I'm talking about, it's called Zeitgeist Addendum: The Review. And if you type in Zeitgeist, well, there's probably a few of those, but if you type in Stefan, S-T-E-F-A-N, and then Zeitgeist Addendum into YouTube, you'll find this 30-minute video. I just stumbled upon this because it was in my list of questions, and I got through about half of it painfully. And I'm going to watch the rest of it, but I literally just went through half of it. So I'm going to go through my notes on this for those of you that have seen it. If you haven't seen it, punch it up after this radio broadcast and check it out. Another point, actually, because this is very, very simple to deal with, is the activism team needs to begin countering some of this stuff because I don't have time to do it. Most of the arguments you see against the Venus Project and the concepts of the economic concepts that we put forth that you won't find hardly any economics book whatsoever, because we're stepping farther back than most academics ever step back as far as the perspective. Most of these concepts are easily debunkable, the ones that are put forward in refutation against us, such as this particular web video and this particular individual from, I believe, Freedom Domain Radio. So I'm just going to quickly go through this, trying my best, because I made some quick notes, trying my best to be as clear as possible with some of the elements that he talks about. For instance, at the very beginning of this video, he states that it is untrue that companies prefer no competition. He's basically saying that companies like competition. He makes that statement later in the video, and I'm baffled as to the absolutely illogical basis of this, since competition in the market system in any competitive environment is based on a gaming mentality, and invariably you want to overcome the competition. I think the Rockefeller comment that competition is sin, or maybe it was one of the Rothschilds, and well, they're absolutely right in their worldview. It is sin, because to be competitive, the ultimate goal is monopoly in any type of competitive environment. Otherwise, it wouldn't be competition. You couldn't even call it competition. So it's absolutely illogical to say that companies want competition. You could rephrase it and say companies like seeing new ideas and building upon them. That's totally different than saying that they want competition. There's no corporation in existence that wants competition because it hinders their profit. It's very simple, no logic at all. I have no idea how he could even state that. In fact, bizarrely, the first 10 minutes of this video, he makes a series of point-by-point issues, and he makes these flagrant comments, these kind of really sniveling, weird, point-by-point, aggressive, dismissing comments using terms like embarrassing and idiots, and it's retarded, and it's he even attributes the concept of the labor that we talk about, the removing of monotonous labor, as being induced by a drug idea and pot-smoking, bong-toting hippies that don't want to work. Very derogatory in the absolute presentation of what he did, so it's very hard for me to take it even remotely seriously, because the vested interest, the emotional ego that he shows in this is so powerful that it was really hard to see beyond that. But I'm going to try and be as objective as possible and not be primitive about it and be emotional. But it was very trying to watch this because of how silly some of it really was. And I hate to fall into the same camp of him because he's basically being emotional as well. But we are human in that sense, and these are things that we all work on. Number two, he says that lying doesn't, quote, get very far in a monetary system. And he basically denotes that you can't really lie in a market system. And he's very general about this. He just throws it out there. And, he's referring to the comment by Jacques Fresco where he states that if you're in a store and the owners of the store recognize that the store next to that store, their store, has something cheaper and better, they're not going to tell you that that's there, because if they were that honest, it would hurt their bottom line. And that's not some kind of empirical statement. That's a general statement that's very much true. Otherwise, you wouldn't have advertising. Otherwise, you wouldn't have competitive advertising where they actually start to compare products. The whole thing is a gaming strategy once again. So the concept of dishonesty that he's advocating is extremely convoluted. He has a surface definition of dishonesty and doesn't realize things like planned obsolescence, the deliberate withholding of efficiency. There's many different angles you can look at the tremendous amount of dishonesty in the market system, and which is, of course, lying, and it actually gets you extremely far. Again, he doesn't even elaborate on it. He just throws this stuff out there. So the third thing he says that I've denoted, he states that profits do not come at the expense of people, and this goes back to the prior point. Profits just don't come from the expense of people. That's not true, he states. Well, that might not always be true, but that's extremely true a great majority of the time, in my experience. Pharmaceutical industry, the cancer industry, again, back to planned obsolescence. The expense of people, what does that mean? It means the violation and dishonesty towards people where they have to be forced into something that isn't necessary, and that comes back to, of course, technology. So when you build a car that's going to break down when the warranty happens, which has been denoted, they did build cars, it had been made public that they designed them so they would break down immediately after the warranty is done. That is at the expense of people. It might not seem that way for the first 10 years. So again, it's completely convoluted. I encourage all of you to watch this.